Sometimes life feels like a long corridor of closed doors. Work falls apart, friends disappear, the body hurts, and the heart grows tired. In those seasons, we don't need slogans. We need a story that shows us how a human being can stand with dignity inside pain. The story of Ayyub is told with astonishing simplicity in the Quran. A man blessed with health, family, and provision is stripped of his comforts and still chooses patience over despair. It isn't a tale about superhuman perfection. It is about a heart that keeps its center when everything else is turning. That's why this story speaks beyond any one community. It is a map for anyone who wants to suffer without becoming smaller. The Quran records Ayyub's moment of intimate prayer in a single line that carries an ocean of meaning. He doesn't argue his case or list his grievances. He simply admits, "Adversity has touched me," and turns toward the one he knows to be the most merciful of the merciful. That short plea does not deny pain. It dignifies it by placing it in front of mercy. The response comes just as plainly. His affliction is lifted, and his family and livelihood are restored. In a world that often equates worth with visible success, the economy of this verse is radical. It tells us that the truest measure of a life is not uninterrupted ease, but the quality of a heart in conversation with its Lord. Elsewhere, the Quran opens a window on Ayyub's inner world. He cries that Satan has touched him with hardship and torment. The wording is careful. He names his distress without letting it define his relationship with God. He does not say he has been abandoned. He says he is afflicted and still calling. That subtle distinction is where resilience lives, not in pretending we feel fine, but in refusing to let pain narrate the whole story. The text then sketches the beginning of relief with a concrete instruction: wash and drink from a spring, and closes with a reminder that patience yields an outcome for those who think. This is patience as movement, not paralysis, faith that acts within its limits instead of waiting passively for the world to change. Classical commentary fills in human textures the Quran leaves unelaborated: the long arc of sickness, the loss of wealth and children, the steadfast care of his wife, and an oath he later fulfills gently by striking with a bundle of grass rather than with harshness. Whether or not every narrative detail is certain, the moral contour is clear. Even in private frustration, Ayyub is guided to a path that protects love and keeps his word without cruelty. This matters for us because suffering often makes people hard. The story insists that integrity and tenderness must grow together, or not at all. One prophetic report, preserved in Sahih al-Bukhari, captures the flavor of Ayyub's gratitude after relief. While he is bathing, locusts of gold begin to fall, and he gathers them until a divine call asks if he has not already been given enough. Ayyub answers with a smile of the heart, "Yes, but I can never be without your blessing." Gratitude here isn't a posture reserved for the desperate. It's a way of inhabiting abundance without worshiping it. That's a lesson our age, trained to chase more, then more, rarely remembers: to hold gifts with open hands, not clenched fists. If we read Ayyub only as an emblem of passive endurance, we miss the depth of his model. He does not anesthetize himself to reality. He feels the wound, names it, and keeps turning toward the source of healing. Contemporary reflections on his story emphasize that this is an active patience, saber that thinks, chooses, prays, and works within what is possible. It does not romanticize suffering. It refuses to let suffering become the measure of truth. That distinction protects us from two common extremes: collapsing under hardship on one side and hardening into denial on the other. So what does this look like in a modern life? First, Ayyub teaches us to shrink the distance between pain and prayer. Many of us wait until we can present a polished version of our struggle before we speak to God or to the people who love us. Ayyub's supplication is almost childlike in its simplicity. When you are overwhelmed, do not rehearse the whole case file. Begin with one honest sentence. Name your reality and pair it with mercy. Then move one practical step inside the day you've been given. Drink from the spring in front of you. Take the medication, make the call, send the application, step outside into light for 10 minutes. Small obediences are how we refuse to let pain have the last word. Second, the story reframes identity during loss. Illness, unemployment, heartbreak, each can claim to tell you who you are. Ayyub loses social standing, capability, and public voice, yet the text insists on calling him our servant, a title of honor that does not ebb with circumstance. In seasons when your skills are sidelined and your public wins are few, relocate your worth from performance to relationship, from what I can do to who I belong to. That shift does not remove grief, but it does remove the humiliation that often rides on top of grief. Humility becomes a ground to stand on, not a hole to fall through. Third, Ayyub's restoration is not a simple rewind to how things were. When relief arrives, he doesn't say, "I'm fine now, I no longer need you." The hadith about the golden locusts frames abundance as an opportunity for deeper gratitude rather than forgetfulness. If hardship can shrink us into bitterness, ease can thin us out into distraction. The story warns against both erosions. It invites a life where grateful attention during illness and after recovery, during scarcity and during prosperity, becomes a daily discipline. One practical way to practice this is the habit of naming 3 specifics each night. One difficulty you carried honestly, one mercy you recognized, one small action you took in hope. Such habits are not self-help tricks. They are ways to keep the heart awake to meaning. Finally, Ayyub's arc speaks to relationships under pressure. Hardship strains marriages, friendships, and communities. The exegetical note that he was guided to fulfill his oath without hurting his wife reminds us that righteousness must be intelligent as well as firm. When hurt tempts us to lash out, the story asks, is there a path that keeps your promise and also protects the person in front of you? Most conflicts are not solved by doubling down on being technically right. They yield when conscience and compassion are allowed to collaborate. That is not weakness. It is moral craftsmanship, strength shaped for love. Ayyub's courage was not flamboyant. It was the quiet refusal to let pain sever him from trust, purpose, and tenderness. If your life right now feels stripped down, take heart from the brevity of his prayer and the wideness of its answer. You do not need to understand the full architecture of your trial to become larger inside it. Begin where he began. Admit what hurts without surrendering your story to the hurt. Ask mercy to meet you there and take today's next good step. Some doors stay closed longer than we wish. But there is a way to walk the corridor with your head high, your hands gentle, and your heart intact. That is the beauty hidden in hardship, the kind that cannot be taken from you. Real patience is not a pose. It is a way of moving through pain without letting pain become your entire identity. Ayyub's story shows this with a clarity that is hard to miss. He does not deny what is happening to him, and he does not decorate it either. He turns his hurt into a sentence he can carry. He has been touched by adversity, and God is the most merciful of the merciful. From that honesty flows a response, and with it, the beginning of restoration. This pairing, naming reality and reaching for mercy, is the core movement we can practice when our own lives feel stripped down. It is not complicated theology. It is a habit of the heart that can be learned. The Quran also sketches a practical scene of relief. Ayyub is instructed to strike his foot and finds a spring, a place to wash and drink, and the healing begins. That detail matters because it ties faith to embodied action. You pray, and then you take the next concrete step that is within reach. For us, the spring may be a doctor's appointment, a difficult conversation, a daily walk in sunlight, or a notebook where we write one honest page each morning. Faith does not replace these steps. It energizes them. The verse then recalls an oath he had made in a moment of strain and shows a merciful way to fulfill it without harm, by striking gently with a bundle of grass. The moral shape is precise. Keep your word, protect the person in front of you, and let compassion govern power. The Hadith literature adds an image of what a grateful heart looks like after hardship. When Ayyub is finally restored, golden locusts begin to fall as a sign of abundance. He gathers them until a divine call asks whether he has not already been given enough. His answer is pure gratitude. He is content, yet he will not refuse a blessing that comes from the one who gives. Gratitude here is not greed disguised. It is recognition. It does not cling to wealth. It recognizes the giver. In our terms, that means learning to hold success without letting it own us, saying thank you without turning the gift into a god. To live this story today, we need language for resilience that honors both spiritual truth and human psychology. Resilience, as defined by the American Psychological Association, is the process and outcome of adapting well in the face of adversity through mental, emotional, and behavioral flexibility, and through the support of relationships and meaning. That is not a secular substitute for Sabre. It is a description of how Sabre looks from the outside. The inward act, trusting God, asking for help, surrendering the need to control, produces outward patterns that researchers keep observing. People draw on purpose, community, and small daily actions to keep going. Meaning is not a luxury when you are hurting. It is fuel. Ayyub's prayer is meaningful because it places pain inside a relationship. When you speak to God, your suffering stops being a sealed room and becomes an addressed experience. You can do this in a sentence. This is hard for me, and you are merciful. Say it aloud. Write it down. Repeat it when the mind spirals. The point is not to magically delete the problem, but to keep the problem from erasing your orientation. Orientation is everything in a storm. A compass does not calm the winds. It tells you which way to face while you walk. Community is the second pillar. The classical commentaries consistently note the steadfast care of Ayyub's wife and the ethical intelligence with which he later keeps his oath without hurting her. Hardship isolates, and isolation distorts judgment. If there is one practice to protect during trials, it is to stay connected to at least one person who will sit with you in truth. Tell them the one sentence you are praying. Ask them to walk with you toward your spring, whatever that tangible step is this week. The story refuses the fantasy of the solitary hero. It shows a human being sustained by love and guided away from harshness. Strength is real only when it can be shaped for gentleness. Action is the third pillar. Notice how relief begins not with a lecture, but with an instruction. Wash and drink. In modern life, that translates into small, repeatable behaviors that keep your body and mind moving toward health. When you cannot change the big picture today, choose a next good step and do it at the same hour each day. Take the pills, keep the appointment, send the email you are afraid to send, walk for 10 minutes, write 3 lines of gratitude specific to this day, not generic slogans. Behavioral science recognizes these as keystone behaviors. The tradition recognizes them as the dignity of effort. In both languages, you are refusing to let pain dictate your entire script. You are writing one line each day that pain cannot edit. Attention is the fourth pillar. After long hardship, ease can make us careless. We drift, stop paying attention, and then wonder why our interior life thins out. The image of Ayyub collecting golden locusts is a reminder to notice gifts without idolizing them. You are allowed to enjoy the return of health, work, or companionship. You are also responsible for remembering where gifts come from and what they are for. The practice is simple. Name blessings precisely and connect them explicitly to purpose. I am grateful for a clear mind this morning, and I will use it to call my mother and submit the application. Gratitude that touches purpose becomes protection against both bitterness and distraction. In relationships, hardship often pressures us into false choices. Keep your promise or keep your kindness. The Quranic detail about the bundle of grass shows a third path, faithful and gentle. When conflict rises, ask yourself 2 questions before you act. What is the exact promise here, and how can I fulfill it without unnecessary harm? This does not mean avoiding hard truths. It means delivering them with moral craftsmanship. The difference between a hammer and a scalpel is not how sharp they are. It is what they are shaped for. You are strong enough to be careful. That is what prophetic patience looks like in a family, a team, a friendship. None of this denies the darkness. Ayyub's own words name torment and harm. He does not spiritualize them away, but he refuses to let torment define the entire field. He keeps praying, thinks clearly, moves when movement is possible, receives help, and later receives abundance with clean hands. If you are in a season where nothing seems to answer, borrow his sentence and his sequence. Speak the pain honestly to the one who hears. Take the step that is in front of you. Guard your relationships with gentleness. Train your attention to thankfulness. And if relief comes, let gratitude deepen your focus rather than dissolve it. This is not positive thinking. It is tested wisdom. It is how a human becomes larger than the wound without pretending the wound was small. When you look back on this season, what will you remember about yourself? Not just what you suffered, but how you carried it. Ayyub's story offers a different kind of success metric. It is possible to stand inside loss without becoming less. It is possible to be exacting with the truth and generous with people. It is possible to let patience be active, gratitude be intelligent, and faith be the axis that keeps you turning toward what is good. Begin now, not when everything is fixed. Put one foot down like a man at a spring, and take the next small step that honors both your reality and your hope. That is the route through hardship that does not waste your pain. Suffering invites 2 stories to grow inside us at once. One says, life is random and cruel, so harden yourself and expect nothing. The other says, there is a way to walk through fire without becoming ash. The third part of Ayyub's journey leans entirely into that second story. It does not deny how severe the losses were. It does not pretend the body did not ache or that friends did not vanish. It simply shows a human being placing pain where it belongs, before the one who knows, and then taking the next right step. That is where a life turns, not when the storm stops, but when the heart refuses to let the storm write the ending. The scriptural core is spare and powerful. Ayyub cries that adversity has touched him and names God as the most merciful of the merciful. There is no catalogue of grievances and no courtroom drama. It is one honest sentence, and it opens a door. The text then describes how relief comes and restoration follows. The emphasis is not on spectacle, but on relationship and response. Call, answer, healing, gratitude. The simplicity itself is a teaching. When your world is noisy with fear, shorten the distance between your pain and your prayer. Speak plainly and then listen for the instruction that moves you a step toward wholeness. The second passage that completes the arc anchors faith in action. Ayyub is told to strike his foot. A spring appears. He is to wash and drink, and the recovery begins. The same verses close with a delicate moral scene. A promise made in anger is fulfilled without harm by striking with a bundle of grass, keeping the letter of the oath while protecting love. Here, patience is not passive endurance, it is ethical intelligence. It thinks about consequences, it guards relationships, it chooses gentleness over harshness without sacrificing truth. For anyone trying to heal a home after a hard season, this detail matters as much as the miracle. Holiness that cannot be kind is not yet holy. After affliction, another image appears in the prophetic reports like sunlight after long rain. As Ayyub bathes, golden locusts begin to fall. He gathers them until a call asks if he has not already been given enough. He answers that he can never be without the blessing of his Lord. This is gratitude with clean hands. It does not despise gifts, and it does not confuse them with the giver. It receives abundance wholeheartedly and refuses to worship it. For modern hearts trained to chase more until we are hollow, this scene is a necessary counterspell. Enjoy the gold without becoming its servant, and let thankfulness deepen dependence on the one who gives. When we translate this wisdom into today's language, we find resonance with what psychologists call resilience. Adapting well to adversity through mental, emotional, and behavioral flexibility, supported by meaning and relationships. That is not a replacement for saber. It is one way to describe saber from the outside. The inward movement, trust, surrender, prayer, creates the outward patterns researchers observe, a clarified purpose, steadier emotions, practical routines, and connection to people who help us keep going. The tradition gives us the why. The science often names the how. We need both if we want courage that is not only lofty but livable, especially in seasons when motivation is thin and the hours are heavy. So what does the last turn of the journey ask of us? Begin with honesty. Say exactly what hurts and say it to God. No theatrics, no self-contempt. The sentence can be small because the one you are addressing is not. Honesty is the opposite of collapse. It is the first brick of a path. Next, choose orientation. The mind will spiral if you let it, dragging you into rehearsed catastrophes. Reorient to mercy each morning, even before the outcome changes. Then take one concrete step, your version of washing and drinking at a spring. Keep the appointment. Send the application. Step into sunlight for 10 minutes. Cook something nourishing. Write 3 lines about what you can still do today. These are not trivialities. They are how a life regains traction when the road is slick with fear. Guard your relationships the way the text guards the dignity of Ayyub's wife. Great trials pressure us toward either withdrawal or sharpness. The verse about fulfilling an oath with a bundle of grass sketches a better craft. Be faithful without being cruel. When tensions rise, ask 2 questions before you act. What exactly is the promise or boundary I must honor here? And how can I honor it in a way that protects the person in front of me? Most damage does not come from necessary truth. It comes from careless delivery. Patience that can only be rigid will eventually break. Patience that can also bend without lying becomes a shelter others can stand under when their own weather turns bad. Let gratitude be your closing discipline, especially when relief finally arrives. Name gifts specifically, so that gratitude does not dissolve into slogans. I am grateful for a clear mind this morning. I will use it to call my Father. I am grateful that my body allowed a short walk. I will use that energy to finish the proposal. This is how we keep abundance from making us forgetful and keep us tethered to purpose after suffering has subsided. Remember Ayyub collecting the locusts of gold without apology, and remember his reply, he could never be without the blessing of his Lord. Let your enjoyment of good days be a way of turning toward the giver more, not less. If you are still inside the hard chapter and the end is not visible, you have not failed. Many sacred stories are written in long sentences. You are allowed to take another breath, to need help, to move slowly. You are allowed to have days where the only victory is that you did not lie to yourself or to the people who love you. Ayyub's victory was not that he never felt the wound. It was that the wound never convinced him to stop turning toward the one who heals. Hold the compass even when you cannot see the map. The corridor will not feel endless forever. When the door finally opens, and one always does, whether it is the solution you prayed for or the strength to carry what remains, step through it with the same dignity you held in the darkness. Keep your promises. Protect love. Work within what is possible and ask for what is beyond you. Let the mercy you received become mercy you offer. Lives are changed less by arguments than by the presence of someone who has suffered cleanly, without becoming small and without making others small. One day, you will tell this story to someone who is standing where you are standing now. You will remember your single, honest sentence, the ordinary steps you took when nothing felt ordinary, the way gratitude kept your hands open when gifts returned. You will be the proof that a person can be refined by hardship without being defined by it, and in telling it, you will discover that beauty does not erase pain. It gathers it into a shape that shines. That is the gift that waited on the far side of patience. It was never just about getting your life back. It was about getting your heart back, larger than before and ready for love.